The life of John Punch began in 1604 in a suburban village of southern Cameroon. His life was relatively peaceful during its first 15 years, but that would soon drastically change. On a day in 1619, Mr. Punch was fishing along the shoreline, embracing the warmth and clear skies. Later that day, he noticed something which vaguely resembled a boat, far off in the distance, gracefully gliding through the vast Atlantic Ocean. It seemed to be gradually approaching the shoreline, calm yet swift. When it finally arrived, several strange-looking men walked ashore and gestured a request to see other citizens of his community. He obliged, and they boarded the ship before having a lengthy discussion about trade and culture. The newcomers had come all the way from Europe, seeking opportunities for trading goods, particularly spices. After a long discussion, the new men guided the Africans into a small room. Mr. Punch and his fellow community members were then informed that they had been tricked and were now captured aboard a ship destined for a city named Veracruz in New Spain, and were captives of Portuguese slave traders. After many long weeks of suffrage to survive, battling starvation and disease, 2 other ships began to surround the Portuguese liner, and before Mr. Punch could understand the circumstance, he was being violently recaptured by English sailors bound for Virginia. He finally arrived in this new land later in 1619, and was given the status of an indentured servant. Life was once again simple, though his freedoms were slightly more restrictive than his comparatively luxurious life in Africa. He now worked on a small plantation belonging to Hugh Gwyn, alongside 2 other servants, Victor and James Gregory. The 3 men often pondered about what life would be like elsewhere in the continent, but it wouldn't be for another 21 years before any action was taken upon these thoughts. In 1640, John, Victor, and James quietly escaped the plantation under the cover of night with plans to venture toward Maryland. After 2 days, despite calculating efforts to cross the colonial boundary undetected, they were ultimately spotted by a local law enforcement officer. They were immediately escorted into a courtroom and sentenced to their chastisements. The 3 men would each receive 30 whippings before being returned to the plantation in Virginia. However, the remaining punishments differed between the 3. Victor and James, who were originally from the Dutch Republic and Scotland, respectively, were each obliged to an additional year of servitude to Hugh Gwyn, along with 3 years of servitude to the Virginian government. John, however, was sentenced to slavery for the remainder of his life. Horrified and surprised, John asked why his punishment was so drastically harsh compared to that of Victor and James. And the response uttered by that very judge began an era that would last hundreds of years. It would be an era that doomed the lives of millions and nearly shattered the nation in a civil war, and even still would not end until its abolishment in the state of Mississippi on February 7th, 2013. This was the beginning of slavery in America.